Unruly cab operators demonstrate why council members don't want to regulate cab colors anymore. Volatile oil trains roll through town but won't share safety information. And as a deadly year escalates in Milwaukee, city leaders search for ways to quell the violence. This is Council Rewind, and I'm Dustin Weiss. As city leaders continue to root through the books, digging up outdated regulations on taxi cabs, they've been presented with an interesting question. Does the city really want to be in the business of protecting cab companies' color identities? For decades, companies like Yellow Cab have enjoyed a city sanction that prevents others from mimicking their color. But with discord among the ranks of this prominent company, the July 8th meeting of the Public Works Committee asked, is this really any of our business?
Why we're here today is that I have been getting communications from various drivers indicating that there is some sort of controversy among and between the Yellow Cab family, and there appears to be some various legal issues being argued over. And the bottom line is neither I nor any other member of this council wants to be in the middle of this. We're not a court. We don't have the power to grant injunctions or award damages or interpret contracts. And since we don't want to be in the middle of it, yet we appear to be somewhat in the middle of it because we are receiving notices from Yellow Cab's management that certain people should be delisted as Yellow Cab operators and are being told to repaint their vehicles and take off their branding material. We issued letters to that effect, and we rescinded those letters. And at the present time, we don't intend to issue any new letters to that effect. But if all this inside controversy continues and people keep wanting us to get involved in terms of enforcing the ordinance, I can tell you what our remedy is going to be, and that is we amend the ordinance and eliminate colors. And we don't care if you paint your cabs pink, green, or orange. Because the council is not going to be in the middle of the legal disputes. It's just that simple.
As you indicated, our current code, Milwaukee Code of Ordinances, section 100-51.5-3, sets forth requirements that are applicable only to taxi cabs that do not meet the definition of network vehicle, and designate the body colors designated for affiliated taxi cabs specifically as follows. For blue for All City Veteran Taxi, yellow for Yellow Cab Co-op, white for Mitchell International Taxi Cab Association, and red for American United Cab Company, Inc., a taxi cab radio dispatch service. That's what the current law requires. And then obviously any of the colors that are not mentioned are free to be taken by any of the independents.
Very good. Please.
Good morning, LaWanda Fletcher from Legislative Reference Bureau Department. I conducted research on 26 comparable cities to Milwaukee. In that research, there are only 3 cities that designate colors for taxi cabs.
Assigning specific vehicle colors for taxi cabs affiliated with certain dispatch companies serves many important purposes. First, dedicated colors are an important part of a company's branding. More people identify the color of a taxi cab to the company it is affiliated with than the name on the cab itself. We spend tens of thousands of dollars each year promoting business for taxi cabs affiliated with our companies. Allowing taxi cabs not affiliated with our company to be painted the same color as those affiliated with our company would be unfair to the independent owner-operators who pay to be affiliated with our service. Courts around the country have held that copying of cab colors constitutes unfair competition, and there's several case laws that I have available if Adam Stevens wants them.
So why can't the one of the registered cab companies who have a designated color, can't they privately enforce their right to the exclusive use of their color and basically bar other drivers from painting the car yellow when they're not affiliated with yellow? I mean, I'm just curious why we're in the loop in any way, shape, or form here.
that the remedy could be in civil court? Is that, seems to be, I don't know if Attorney Stevens.
Because
would
when,
have
you know,
any-
I think Mr. Christensen is right to a point. There is a branding issue here, and yes, these companies do want to have their vehicles branded, but that branding is coming to them via a city ordinance, and, you know, it kind of almost borders on a franchise for which we're not getting any money. I mean, potentially, we could sell the right to brand these vehicles and have the exclusive use of the color yellow or red or blue and charge a price for that, and then we'd be happy to enforce those franchise rules. But right now, the city has the worst of both worlds. We're not making any money on it, yet now we're in the middle of controversy over requiring people to repaint their cars.
Let me start it up with the color. The color is, we bought it, we pay for this color, is a logo. And we bought it, the guy who created, and it was well documented, and University of Chicago and University of Wisconsin, and his name is John Hertz, and now called rental car company. That when he created the yellow color. Yellow color, it doesn't just come overnight. It come with the money and the time that the people before us spend it. And we bought it for them the color and Hertz company. So now they know as a rental car. And the other things is the issue is the driver that is no longer with us. Those drivers are complaining from our customer, the public. The public are complaining. We need more drivers to enjoy yellow cab to drive. We need more drivers. We want more business. But when it's coming to customer, we're really restricted. And somebody refusing people of color, the black people, and in the documentation. We have a documentation, and we no longer want that person to be driving the yellow cab. And we are the biggest company in Milwaukee right now, and also we are keeping a history in the city of Milwaukee for this color. And then we are a good reputation company. We're not just bad reputation, and we don't want these bad drivers. Thank you.
Okay.
He's the most corrupt person.
No, wait a minute. No, time out. No, time out. Order. You see this?
I just want to say one word, please.
No more, no word. No, we
Just
had
one thing, okay?
No, we had 4 witnesses. No.
I got a document. Whatever you want to name, everything I got.
No.
You want to destroy everything? Sit down. I want to try. Don't do that. The police coming.
Please, sit down.
Well, I'm really sorry about that,
No, now wait. I did have some questions for Mr. Omar, and I guess, I guess this.
Chairman, I'm going to move to hold to the call, Chair.
All right, there's been a motion to hold it a call of the chair.
This is not a circus, folks.
Sorry about that.
No, this is not a circus. Move to hold the call, Chair.
Mr. Chairman.
And on that motion, this is Exhibit A, why we shouldn't be in the business of issuing colors. Because even if everything Mr. Omar says is true, and it may be true, I have no reason.
I got
to-
a documentation.
well, whether you have documentation or not is irrelevant. The point is, you have a property right, contractual right in maintaining the integrity of your brand, of your company. You have the right to allow people to associate with you, and you have the right to terminate their association with you. The courts are open and available for you to exercise your remedies, whether through injunctive relief or damages or whatever other remedies are provided under the contracts you execute with the people who drive under your brand. But we're not involved, we do not want to be involved in that. And if it takes us eliminating this color coding to take us out of this loop so we don't have to ever be in this room again, having people yelling and screaming back and forth, because we're not equipped to adjudicate the truth or falsity of these claims. We're just not equipped to do it. That's not our role. And we're not conducting trials. We're not going to swear in witnesses. We're not going to take testimony. That's up to the courts to work out. And that is, you guys almost clinched the argument for eliminating color coding by this squabbling. And we'll hold this. We'll let the city attorney sort it out. And believe me, if there is a determination that the city has no legal exposure to eliminate color coding. We're going to eliminate color coding. On your own.
The matter was held pending analysis by the city attorney's office. High-profile news stories where trainloads of Bakken crude oil derailed and exploded have caught the public's attention, prompting the Public Safety Committee to examine the issue in April. At that meeting, officials from Canadian Pacific pledged to inspect their rails and bridges in Milwaukee and work together to promote safety. So, though the July 9th meeting of the Public Safety Committee expected an update on the cooperative effort, they found out it was anything but.
I sent a letter to CP Rail, Dan Sabatica, who's the director of their bridge maintenance, and asking for a copy of their inspection report so that we could review it and have some documentation and reassurance, formal reassurance that the public safety there wasn't any concern for public safety. After a couple of communications via email, they did come back. They did indicate that the bridge inspection was completed satisfactorily, and that they did not find any immediate concerns that would require repairs at the time, and that they were in full compliance of their annual inspections for their facilities. He did also indicate, and I did go back and ask for a copy of the report. I did not get a copy of the report with that communication.
You did not?
I did not, no. He did then reply that it was not their policy to provide a copy of that report, and that we would not be getting it. But again, went on to reassure us that they were following all federal regulations and standards, and that the bridge was in compliance. When this file came up for the communication, obviously not having really the detail, the engineering detail behind it, their inspection, I did notified them of the file and request that they attend to provide a briefing. And then I got a reply, and I think Alderman Wachowski was privy to that reply, that they were not going to be attending.
Does Mr. Playley get a copy of this report, or does anyone from the state?
From my understanding, it's just the oversight that they have is through the Federal Railroad Administration, and so that they provide the report to them, and the oversight comes from them.
So can we get a copy from them?
I have not pursued that. I certainly can do that, and maybe through Jeff Playley. I don't know. I mean, he probably has better connections at FRA than I do. I mean, that may be a path that we could try to get that report.
Would you maybe describe, for the benefit of people in the audience and watching on TV and the committee, what's the protocol for the inspection of highway bridges or publicly owned facilities? Just to set a contrast.
As a matter of fact, I've got our structural engineer here that I think it would be very good to have him come to the table and provide you that.
Yeah, Craig Liberto, structural design manager. As far as for bridges, city bridges, state bridges, et cetera, anybody who's doing that inspection has to be trained and go through a comprehensive training class, and they have to get certified. Once we do that bridge inspection, we file a report with the Wisconsin Department of Transportation. That is on their Mint site, and it's available for anybody to look at as long as they log in. So there is public records available for any bridge inspected in the state of Wisconsin. Furthermore, then the FHWA does audits. They will do periodically, maybe every 2 years, they'll go out to the bridge itself and do a separate inspection with the inspectors that actually performed it to do an audit and just see if what they're getting is similar to what is actually in the report. So there's checks and balances for every bridge inspection that we do.
The current structure is Canadian Pacific evaluates these bridges and then tells the U.S. government or state or local government, don't worry about it, it's fine. They have an inherent self-interest to probably do the least about maintenance and extending their operational expenses. Has there been any discussion about seeking change in in law, in federal law, saying, why isn't the consumer being protected? Why are we allowing a private company to determine our safety in our country, especially with the potential explosions that have occurred in the past? So, I mean, I would be happy to work with all my colleagues to seek a change in federal law and put consumers first versus private interests. This has come about, I think, as a result of, I think, thoughtful journalism that has been done in this country. Unfortunately, there's been terrible incidents of tragedy across the United States, but to allow a private corporation to determine the public welfare and good, it's like letting a fox determine the chicken fence isn't strong enough to keep the chickens out. It's ridiculous. So I think that's one thing we should seek with our congressional representatives, literally a change in federal law that the U.S. Railroad should hire some people to determine whether these bridges are safe or not allow a private corporation to make that determination. Secondarily, I think we should follow up with our congressional representatives and get a letter signed by all of them demanding a release of this report. And if we don't get the release of the report, I think we have no other choice that we will seriously have to consider, I think, for our own self-interest and protection, to authorize us to hire our own structural engineer and go out there and make a determination if it's safe or not. I think we have an obligation to our constituents to do all we can. But I mean, I've gone to that bridge. I've seen the reports on TV. To me, when you look at those beams, and they seem rusted through, I think the reality is that maybe we've been lucky.
And I would add to that, indicating that not only our congressional representative, but also Senator Tammy Baldwin has been championing the cause of reform with regard to Bakken crude oil, and I believe we should also be contacting the two U.S. senators, asking them for their support in getting this matter resolved.
Council members plan to pursue further inspections and legislation to ensure the safety of Bakken oil trains. Finally, more people in Milwaukee have died as a result of homicide through July of this year than in all of last year. On July 23rd, the Public Safety Committee called a special all-hands-on-deck meeting for city departments to address the growing public health crisis.
I know this is obviously probably the most concerning issue for every alderman in every aldermanic district, and that is the safety of its citizens and its community. We felt very strongly that obviously what's going on in our community is shocking and upsetting. And we want to hear and bring all hands on deck as to finding out what the current operations are in terms to address this issue. We recognize very clearly up front that this is not simply a law enforcement issue, although we do certainly have the police department here, the district attorney's office, and the court system here. It's important to also recognize what are the violence prevention strategies being undertaken by the city, what type of collaboration is or is not occurring, and how we can change the outcomes going forward. And I think this is an opportunity for not only this committee, but I'm sure other council members who may come up later who watch the program to also address these issues and ask questions. But clearly, we feel this is, without a doubt, our number one priority right now for our city.
But what I want to do briefly is to talk about, again, going back to the model of risk reduction to aid and violence prevention. That's what we have to do. We look at things like intimate partner violence and abusive behavior across the lifespan. We want to make certain that we just go upstream to deal with violence concerns in a way to make certain that we deal with domestic violence issues. We know that if there is an opportunity and if children are exposed to violence in a home, they think it's normal, and they may grow up to resort to violent behavior to solve issues, and we want to make certain that we do that. We want to focus on future risk reduction.
In District 7 and the Milwaukee County Behavioral Health Division, their mobile urgent treatment team, to respond to incidents of violence in District 7 where children are present and children are witness to violence. And again, as the commissioner said, the project just officially kicked off last week. The target group of the intervention and treatment, if necessary, are children. Although typically between the ages of 5 and 17, although younger children may be involved if they're also present. The mobile urgent treatment team, the MUT team, will respond to police calls more likely the day following the incident, or if the police request that evening or time of day when the incident occurs. The MUD team will also be available 24/7 to the police department, to District 7 Police, just to respond as resources.
So this, I mean, it's a fascinating statistics. You show that 2/3 of the homicides in our city are due to arguments. So what do police departments do to address arguments? I mean, that's a question for the police chief to maybe address, but how do you police arguments?
Well, there are, if you look at some of what other cities are doing, I'm not going to get it right. The program in Chicago that's called, it used to be called, yes, thanks. It's the interrupters, but it's called the, somebody help me? Cure violence. Thank you, Mike. The idea is that you have individuals that can go out into the community and become aware of these disputes so they can interrupt them before the dispute actually leads to violence.
I think all of us understand over the last few decades the concept of broken windows and how the built environment affects criminal activity or the lack thereof. So we've really looked at a number of our programs, and we've, quite frankly, re-engineered the department so that we line up better with law enforcement agencies and create partnerships with law enforcement agencies and community advocates. So one of the first places where that actually happens is in our baseline code enforcement. So as all of you know, we receive a lot of complaints about conditions in neighborhoods, over 30,000 of them a year. We couple that with self-initiated inspections in areas that through input from community partners, we see our hot spots that need additional help, whether or not we're getting the complaints on in, and we attack quality of life issues in the neighborhood.
The city was on the forefront in the state in using a particularly recently amended state law to go after abandoned foreclosure properties. As Adam suggested, an abandoned property like that can be a big-time target for criminals. Drug dealing, prostitution, vandals, squatters, all kinds of things can happen at abandoned properties, as well as it can be a major detriment to the neighborhood just by visual appearance and the type of folks that are being attracted to that property. So I worked a lot on the back end of it, sort of where observing the problem that judgments were sitting out there too long, I used the state law to affect 19 properties to push them into a sale despite the bank's wishes in those particular cases. And so by pushing the property to sale, it gets the property back into commerce, and it also sends a message to the lenders that were delaying their sales that they better get to it or they're going to also face the same type of action from the city. So while we've only handled a handful of those directly, many more indirectly have been helped, and there are about 150 more that the city has identified for future action. So this will be nice to do as a cleanup job, but at the same time, the city attorney's office also met with the civil division of the circuit court and got a new policy implemented at the circuit court that should prevent zombie properties from happening. The problem was that a judgment would be entered, and the case would be coded closed, and no one would monitor that case. Now the courts are going to be monitoring those cases from here on out to make sure that this doesn't happen. So we've taken care of it on a preventative end, and now it's just a matter of going back and cleaning up the cases that are still out there.
This is a representation of crime in Milwaukee, 2007 to 2015, the overall trend line, and the comparison of 2014 to 2015, first 6 months of this year. All of the others are also January through June. So as you can see, despite the fact that the long-term trends are still much lower now than they were in 2007, we have, notwithstanding that fact, seen a significant increase in the first 6 months of homicides. It's pretty dramatic. It's the highest number since 2007. And we've also seen a spike, an increase in robberies now compared to the baseline year. So again, there's a long-term trend remains to be seen, but certainly it has it's worked against our trends up till now. Next. This is another way of representing the same data. This talks about what the normal range is over the course of those 8 years. And as you can see, Every one of those categories is within the normal range right now, except violent crime, which is clearly being driven, once again, by robbery and homicide. This is the overall trend of crime in the city of Milwaukee these last several years. As you can see, we had close to 80,000 reportable index crimes in, what year is that? I'm having a hard time making it out, Joel. In '07, and that number, as of now, is down below is 32,000.
But it is an ongoing challenge when you do have, in some cases, and this is a common occurrence with our non-fatal shootings, where you have one offender essentially shooting at someone else, and their preference is to settle the score down the road. That's a concern. That's a community-wide dynamic that, quite frankly, exists in a number of our cases, and we still deal with that. We bring in uncooperative witnesses on our non-fatal shootings all the time. But that certainly contributes to the challenge of, number one, his department being able to solve these crimes first, and then number two, us being able to successfully prosecute each and every one of them.
Chief, is there any additional resources that you need and that you have asked for that you think would help address what's going on currently today that we should know of?
Well, we're not making any shortage of arrests right now. So far this year, we've already seized close to 1,300 firearms, which is higher than any number since 2007. I think some of our challenges are really is what happens to the offenders once they are subjected to the available penalties. And I've said for the last several years that the penalties here for illegal firearms possession are the weakest I've ever seen, which clearly has an impact on the alternatives available to the DA's office in terms of negotiating with a bad guy, and certainly has an impact with the penalties available to a judge when said bad guy is in front of them. So you can have somebody who statutorily meets the definition of being a career criminal, and one, they qualify for a concealed carry permit, and two, no matter how many times they're arrested for illegally carrying a gun, it's a misdemeanor. And so one of our challenges with these argument fights is, immature people have a incentive to have their gun nearby. One of our recent investigations, the bartender at the bar said that folks only leave here before closing for two reasons: to go to their car to go home, or to go to their car to get a gun. And that's, it's the proximity of that firearm to the dispute that I think escalates so many of our fights into a circumstance in which people think that it's a socially approved conduct to use deadly violence to resolve an insult or an affront.
We've just gone through 4.5 hours of testimony from 9 different agencies. I believe the circuit court was here earlier but had to leave. I think we have certainly had evidence of coordination and collaboration on many different efforts here. I don't think we've stumbled across what the cure is for violence in the community. I think this is certainly something that's not just one item. And I don't think we got in this condition in one day. It's going to take longer than one day to get out of it.
The reports were held in committee. And that's a look back at some of the important issues discussed in the most recent Common Council cycle. For the City Channel and Council Rewind, I'm Dustin Weiss.